Karen, you inspired me. I added mayor by my name just so.
We use them for so many different meetings that it helps identify when you log in. So,
yeah, I wish they did that on more meetings, actually. I know Wasatch Front Regional Council, we have people from many different areas that I don't interact with much. So,
yeah, and that was the main reason I did it.
Okay. Got a half a minute, so we're almost ready to start. Oh, here we go. Good afternoon. We welcome everyone to this electronic meeting of the West Valley City Council. And as required by the state, we have a statement that is read at the beginning of each of these electronic meetings. Pursuant to Utah Code, West Valley City has determined that this meeting will be held electronically without an anchor location given the ongoing novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. West Valley City has determined the pandemic presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at an anchor location. This meeting will be held electronically. Members of the press and public are invited to view this meeting live on YouTube at www.youtube.com/user/WVCTV. Very good, thank you. We will call our meeting to order. Last time when I looked at participants, I got off, so I'll just count the pictures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're all here, full quorum tonight. With that then, we'll go to our minutes of February the 9th.
I move to approve those minutes, Mayor.
Second.
Okay, then hearing no further discussion, without objection, then the minutes will be approved. Hearing no objections, the voting is unanimous. Okay, then the regular meeting agenda, there's no changes. There's doesn't look like it'll be a long meeting, but any concerns or questions there? Okay. I will note so that you are prepared or can make any necessary preparations. At the end of our study meeting, we will hold a closed meeting for purpose of discussing security. Okay. And remember that we all need to be assured that each one of us is in a location where no one else can hear or participate. Okay, with that then, I guess there's no comments on our regular meeting later tonight. For our new business, we have 2 items on our agenda for next week. The first one is application S1 2020, filed by Ken Olson, final plat approval for Wood Hollow Estates, Phase 3. For the public, this is at 7300 West, 6200 South. And I believe, unless Miss Nicole has, Nicole Cottle, gonna have to change that. Got to call him by the last name now. Well, has any comments, we'll turn right to Mr. Steve Lehman. Okay, Steve, go ahead. Oh, Nicole, you had some?
No, sir, I was going to say right to Steve.
Sorry
Okay.
about that.
We'll just go right to Steve, and then before you begin the second one, I'll read it into the record so we for sure have that. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Steve Lehman with the Community and Economic Development Department. So as the mayor mentioned, this request is from Mr. Ken Olson, who is developing the Wood Hollow Estate subdivision. So just to orient you, the portion that's developed here in the south with the single family homes is the Sunset Hills project. The council just approved the remaining phases here moving to the west. North of Sunset Hills is Wood Hollow. East of this, you have the U-111, and then the new road that kind of curves in this map is the new 6200 south, which makes a connection into U-111. So the existing lots that you see platted there in Wood Hollow, their phase 2 is to the east of that, and we'll talk about the next phase in Wood Hollow in just a minute. But this area that we've highlighted in light blue is sort of the location of the next phase, which is phase 3 of Wood Hollow. And if we can go to the next slide, which essentially is the subdivision plat itself. This property is located on approximately just under 10 acres of ground. There are 30 new single-family homes that will be built here. The overall density here is about 2.95 units per acre. Lots do range in size from 7,300 up to over 11,000 square feet. Access will be gained from 6200 south, which is the top street on this plat, as well as a connection that comes in from Wood Hollow phase 1 to the east. The development of this property has taken a number of years. This was started in 2006, which actually preceded the recession. But since that time, phase 1 and phase 2 have been moving forward. Century Communities is the builder there. Mr. Olson is planning on developing the rest of Wood Hollow, which is this phase and probably 2 or 3 more additional phases. There is a development agreement here that guides the development. We'll talk a little bit about that in the next application because Mr. Olson brought a new piece of property into Wood Hollow, and in doing so requested that that property be included in the overall development agreement. At that time, we were able to negotiate standards that were higher in place than the original Wood Hollow development. So we feel that the lot sizes here in this phase are increasing in size as they will towards the west. We feel that this will be a good development for the west bench of the city. And that is our report.
Thank you, council. Any questions?
I have one. In the city or in the Planning Commission's minutes, there was a statement about the hillside and the slope and different things. And it says we do not have a hillside ordinance. Do we need one for the future?
We don't have a hillside ordinance in the city. This is really of anything, the one project that could require one. However, the preliminary plat that the developer showed, lots are at the base of the hillside. So there won't be any encroachment into anything that would be, say, 30% slope, which is a typical hillside ordinance requirement. So the homes, as we move further to the west in this project, will be at the base of the slope. They won't encroach that hillside area.
Okay, so we go back there and don't have to worry about it in the future?
Correct. The hillside in this particular project actually will be an amenity. We ended up having a coordination with the Sunset Hills project to the south, where we will have a natural trail that will lead to the top of the little knoll that's at the west of this project. Our Parks Department envisions having a gazebo, having some benches that people are able to walk up and sit down and look over the valley. So we anticipate that as being a good amenity for residents in this area, in addition to the large city park that has been a contributing factor from both the Sunset Hills and the Wood Hollow developers.
Okay. So did we get parks fees to be able to build that amenity on top of the knoll, or?
So we are collecting parks fees here, yes. The park property has already been dedicated. Sunset Hills dedicated their portion, and Wood Hollow developed their portion in phase 1. So the park is already dedicated. We are collecting park impact fees for such time that that park is constructed.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, is this just an administrative action?
Yes, it is, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds like, well, I guess I shouldn't say sounds like. It doesn't sound like there's any more questions. So with that then, we'll move on to the next item. This is application SMI 9/2020. Again, filed by Ken Olson, final plat approval for the Wood Hollow Estates Phase 4, 6310 South, 7020 West. Mr. Lehman.
Thank you, Mayor. This application, as mentioned in the last one, is an application for property that was not part of the original Wood Hollow development. There is a little triangular shaped piece of property just west of U111 that's just under 3 acres. There is a communications tower, relay tower, just to the south of this property, as you can see in this illustration. About a year ago, Mr. Olson approached staff about the possibility of combining this property with the other portion of Wood Hollow. And as we discussed with him, the options there, because the property was zoned A, the only option was RE. Well, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to plat an RE subdivision here when you've got mostly R1 properties. And so we negotiated with Mr. Olson to bring this piece in with the other phases of Wood Hollow. But in doing so, we modified the development agreement, of which the council did this a couple of months ago. And the enhancements actually are quite substantial. The original development agreement for Wood Hollow had 1,400 square foot housing. Mr. Olson bumped that up to 1,650 square feet and larger even for a 2-story. The Wood Hollow original development agreement did not require anything more than a 2-car garage. Mr. Olson was willing to do 3/4 of the homes here with a three-car garage. So bringing the standard closer to our current standards that we use for single-family housing in the city. The materials as well. The use of stone and fiber cement siding was enhanced. So overall, we feel that adding this little small component to the overall remaining Wood Hollow estates is going to be a great benefit for this area. So this is the little piece of property, just under 3 acres in size. The next illustration is the subdivision plat, I believe. And so this phase will gain access from phase 2, which is to the west. And hopefully we'll have that slide up here shortly. Anyway, so this phase will gain access from the west. There is a stub street that we provided from phase 2 that would go into this triangular property that will provide access. There we go. So this is a rather uniquely shaped subdivision, to say the least, but really makes the best sense of what we feel can be done here. So the access comes in at the top from phase 2. It will then sort of go in a southwesterly direction. We are also requiring this developer to provide a stub road into property to the south. And although that is currently being used as a communications tower, we anticipate that that property could develop in the future. So we want to ensure that it has access. The developer here has no problem with that. We'll simply provide a stub road with all the utilities so that if the communications property develops, that would be ready to go. So the lots here are, they range from 75 to 16,000 square feet with an average over 10,000 square feet. So lots here will be rather large. Mr. Olson will be required to install a barrier wall along 6200 South, similar to what Sunset Hills has done. So we feel that this will be a good little addition to finish out this triangular shaped property. And that is our report.
Thank you, council.
Steve, in the future, that road going to the south, is it anticipated if it ever hooks into another subdivision, that that little knuckle will be deeded over to the lot 406 and 407? Or will it stay kind of that knuckle look?
It's a good question. That will actually stay. And the reason that it will stay is that they need that little knuckle to get the frontage for their property. If that were to go straight, the lots would have been very narrow. So that will be the reason that the knuckle stays. The road going south would not connect in with anything in Sunset Hills just due to the topography here. And we do not expect a connection out to U111. Even though the communications tower has access to U111, we do not believe that the state would grant another residential access. So these lots, in addition to maybe another 8 or 10 lots, would simply go back through the Wood Hollow development.
Thank you.
Hearing no further comments, question. Thank you, Mr. Lehman. We appreciate your information. We'll now move to our communications. First item on our communications is titled Vacant Land Map and Residential Pipeline Update. And it looks like maybe Mr. Pastorick is going to get online. Now he's turned on his microphone. We're ready. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. We wanted to share with the council some information that we update annually on development within the city. And so I'm going to share my screen and first of all, show a map that we update each year. So the map that hopefully you can see on your screen now is a map that we, again, update annually to track vacant land in the city. And so just to walk you through the color coding that we use here. So first of all, the blue property, which is the area that we have the most of, is vacant property where there's no prior approval. So there's nothing that's being reviewed by the city. There's no recent zone changes. It's just vacant property. The property in orange would be properties that are actually under, well, at least at the beginning of the year, were under review by the city. So they had for example, a conditional use permit in or a subdivision plat that was under consideration by the city. Those that are in red are ones that actually have a development agreement that was executed by the city. And then finally, green would be properties that have actually received development approval, meaning they've have the subdivision that's been approved or a conditional use permit has been approved, but have not yet been built. So you can see when we did this at the first of the year, there were just over 2,000 acres of property left, which is now less than 10% of the city, about 9% that's left to develop. And to put that in perspective, if you look at over the last 3 years, we've been developing property at a rate of about 120 acres a year. Now, obviously that fluctuates, but that's been our most recent rate, if you will, of property consumption. And just again, to kind of put that in perspective, if we were to continue to develop at that rate, all the remaining vacant land would be developed in about 17 years. So one other thing that this does not factor in is we are seeing interest in redevelopment. In fact, I received an email from a developer today interested in trying to redevelop some property. So this does not factor in property that's already developed where people have an interest in redeveloping property. And so again, this is something that we produce each year and really just helps us understand where development opportunities are and what stage of the development process land is in the city. We also wanted to share with you what we call our development pipeline. And so this is for residential property. I'm going to enlarge this a little bit so it's a little easier to see. So we split this into two different tables. So we track all of the single family detached residential properties in the city, or so basically single family developments in the city. So the name of the project, where it's located, the number of lots that were in the project to begin with, and then the number of lots remaining. So the number of lots remaining would be how many lots have not yet been issued a building permit. Okay, so once a lot has a building permit, even though the home may still be under construction, we remove it from this list. And you can see the status of these different projects, whether it's just received plat approval or if it's actually under construction. And so as you go down the list, you can see that, again, as of the first of the year, we had 464 lots left. Now, again, this doesn't factor in any property that has yet to be platted. This is just developments that have been platted and have lots still available. And then looking at multifamily, so you have similar, the name of the project, the location, the number of units, the total number of units approved when the project was first approved, and then how many units are remaining. Again, ones that have not been permitted yet. And you can see here the total number being just under 1,200. And so where this kind of information is helpful, particularly for staff, is it helps us understand building inspection workload. So knowing what's in the pipeline is, so to speak, we can get an idea of how many inspections will be coming up. Also, we use this type of information along with our vacant land map to help with different projections. So for example, we get requests from Granger Hunter Improvement District as they try to make projections on needs. When we're doing transportation studies, as we have this information, it helps us to know what's in a particular area, so we know how much more demand there will be on roads in a given area. We've even had the school district asking for information along these lines to help them project just needs for the district in a particular area of the city. So again, this kind of information is very helpful for staff as we look at just making projections and different needs, whether it be for transportation or otherwise. And so we just wanted to share this by way of information. And so no asks here, just sharing information this evening. Any questions I can answer on this information?
I have some questions, Steve.
Yes, sir.
On the map, what is indicated by black and what is indicated by white?
So it's more a function there of just the, at the scale this map is, those are individual, just the boundaries of individual lots. And so if you were to,
that it all turns black?
right, it's if you zoom in closer to the map, you'll see that those are just individual lots. And so, in fact, I can share my screen here again and show what that looks like a little bit closer up. So, so as you zoom in, you can begin to see that.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's just lots that have been developed. So,
and then the blue properties, am I right in thinking that they could just be developed according to the zoning? Somebody gets a building permit and builds, and it wouldn't ever necessarily end up green or orange or red. It would just go from blue to build.
Well, in every case, with the exception of like lots that are already platted, there would be some type of site plan approval. So for example, on a large commercial, let's say a property that's zoned commercial or industrial, they would still need to go through either a conditional use permit or a permitted use application where they're getting site plan approval before they get their building permit. The only case where they would not need to do that is if you look closely on the map, you'll see there's just a few scattered green small lots where those are ones that have already been platted, and it's just a building permit at that point. But anything that has not already been platted would need to either be platted or receive site plan approval for like a commercial or industrial project.
And then on the pipeline, how are things added here? Is it alphabetically? Is it by the date that something happened? There are no dates on this, so I'm just trying to understand, what I expect to be accomplished next or not.
Sure. So these are listed alphabetically, and we add them as projects receive, whether it's zoning approval and there's a development agreement, or there's a subdivision plat that's approved. We could add, if it's helpful, more information about when these projects were first approved. Part of what's tricky, for example, as Steve Lehman pointed out earlier, Wood Hollow is on this list at the top, and that project started clear back in, I believe it was 2006. So some of these have been in the works for many years. Others just received approval within the last few months. So we could gather that information. We just haven't historically.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any further
Steve?
questions?
Are you there, Steve? You hear
Yes,
me?
sir. Yes, sir.
Question. Procedurally, we do it accordingly in our time manner.
I'm sorry, Councilman. I'm not sure I understood the question.
Any complaining for our developers? Anyone concerning or waiting too long or waiting too little?
From my perspective, we have not received complaints in terms of timeline. In fact, we actually hear quite often that we're the faster city to deal with. We more often hear comments from developers saying you guys actually are fast in your review process compared to some other cities. So I've personally not heard complaints about issues of timeline or projects taking too long for review.
Okay. Good to hear.
Hearing no further comments, we'll move to the next item on our agenda, which is a legislative update. And I believe Mr. Lincoln Church has joined us.
Hi, Mayor, how are you?
Just fine, sir. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Just a quick update today. First, everyone, we had President's Day, obviously yesterday, so the legislature took the day off this week. Kind of the big news for the legislative session this week is budget numbers do come out. We're getting kind of an early preview of those numbers in terms of what they'll be dealing with in terms of the surplus this year. And it does look as though we'll have about $1.5 billion worth of one-time surplus, and then about $100 million worth of ongoing surplus that they'll be working with. These are the updated consensus numbers that the legislature will then be budgeting to. What they traditionally do is use their December numbers as kind of a baseline for early discussions. And then once they get February numbers, those are the numbers they use for the final budgeting considerations that are taking place. The subcommittees are making presentation to Executive Appropriations Committee, which is the leadership committee that oversees the budgeting process. And those discussions were taking place late last week and early this week. So budgeting is well underway, and now the jockeying for a different prioritization of various funding requests are coming in and obviously being considered and prioritized by leadership on both the House and the Senate side. So that's what's going to be taking place most of this week. In terms of some of the news that we've been working on and items that have been of interest for West Valley City, billboards has been a major issue. I did have the mayor up last week to talk to some folks about some issues, and Billboards was one of the topics that we were working on pretty heavily last week. I do think we've made some pretty significant headway on this issue that would still allow local governments to regulate billboards within their cities, albeit it would be regulation closer to how you regulate on-premise signs. We have successfully negotiated with the legislature to ensure that local governments do maintain much of the regulatory authority around billboards. And so that bill is going to continue to proceed. It's still in the Senate for consideration. This is a Senate bill, so it's got a long trek ahead of it and still many hurdles to pass before it gets finally passed. But we have successfully kind of reduced the bill to something that's at least a little bit more manageable for local government. One of the other issues that we chatted about last week that will likely be considered this week is the issue of ADUs, or accessory dwelling units. And again, looking for a specific carve out for West Valley City, recognizing the efforts that have gone underway within the city to address the issue of affordability among our housing stock within the city. And so we're still actively working with Representative Ward on that carve out for West Valley City, and feel as though we'll be relatively successful in our efforts to get him to see kind of the unique circumstances that we deal with in the city, and hopefully give us a carve out from what's being considered by the legislature. And then the last piece that we've been dealing with is Representative Paul Ray's bill, which deals with building inspections as well as design standards. Again, most of this bill is going away. Gary Crane, who's the city attorney for Layton City, has been actively working on this effort on behalf of many of the stakeholders that expressed some concern with kind of the broad sweeping nature of what was taking place. And if you don't recall, what this bill essentially did was took away inspections from local governments and gave that to the development community, and then also restricted the ability for local governments to have specific design standards on developments that they've approved. We've pulled those two provisions out of the bill and kind of gone back to this basic concept that says that you have to respond within a timely manner on building inspections, which, in talking to both Nicole and Steve, doesn't seem to be a major issue for the city. And so from that standpoint, I think we've been able to kind of pull this bill back pretty considerably as well. So those are the three main efforts from last week. Again, thanks, Mayor Bigelow, for your willingness to come to the Capitol for an early morning meeting. And with that, Nicole and Mayor, I'm happy to turn it back over to you guys and see if there's anything else or any specific questions you'd like me to answer.
Council, any particular issues of concern to you?
Lincoln?
Yes, Councilmember Christensen.
Wanted to make sure my mic was working.
I've got you.
I've been receiving a lot of information recently on billboards and how the HB 61 is going the wrong way and ta-da, 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 ta-da. Are we at the point now where we've contacted our delegation from West Valley City enough that they know how we feel, or do we have to keep contacting them?
No, fortunately, the relationship that we have, especially on the Senate side, keep in mind this bill's still in the Senate, so we've been working actively with the senators that represent West Valley City, to include both Dan Thatcher as well as Senator Karen Main, and have been very active in making sure they're up to speed on our issues, and they've both been very responsive to where we're at on the issue. So I think at this point we've done an adequate job of letting them know. More than anything at this point, we're just keeping them up to date on the negotiations as they continue to proceed. And there's still likely to be some negotiations on that bill. So we've been actively keeping them in the loop, but thank you guys for your efforts as well.
Okay, I just, I don't want to over contact them and have them throw up their hands and say, forget it, I'll vote for it.
No, I think we're in a good spot, and both of them have been very responsive to where we're at. So.
Okay, thank you.
Just a comment that there is a tremendous amount of work going on from our staff, which includes Lincoln now. And, things are happening that are positive for some things that could have been very bad for cities, and certainly for West Valley City. And so certainly a lot to appreciate there for the efforts that Lincoln and Nicole and others have put in to try and make things better. That is a part of the process. You don't get everything you want, but you can certainly make them better. And so things seem to be progressing quite well, just from my viewpoint. So keep up the good work. And if there's no more questions or comments, then we'll move forward. Thank you, Lincoln. Appreciate your giving us an update.
Thanks, Mayor.
Then we'll go to our council calendar. Any comments there? Hearing none. Potential future agenda items. Hearing none. Council reports. Oh, I can usually count on Don for something, but this must have been a slow week. Okay. Then if there's no more regular business for our open portion of this meeting, then let's have a motion to adjourn the public portion of this meeting and reconvene, and you will have to sign back in, reconvene in a closed session for the purpose of discussing security. So if someone wants to make a motion to do that, we can finish up here and
Move to adjourn the study session and move into a closed meeting for the purpose of discussing security.
Second.
properly before us, then without objection, we will be adjourned and you can sign back in with the sign in that you have for the closed meeting. Thank you all for your comments and discussion. Appreciate it. And appreciate those who signed in electronically.